and welcome to our virtual hub. My name's Claire at Dundee Carer Centre, and today I'm joined by Danny from Faith in the Community. Hi, Danny.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I think it'll be good for people to get an update on Faith in the Community and what's currently going on. So I'll hand over to yourself, Danny. Would you maybe just give us a bit of an overview of Faith in the Community and the support services it offers, please?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm a community development worker with Faith in Community Dundee, and we're an independent charity based within the city. What we do is we've kind of always been here, well, for the last 10 plus years, as part of Faith in Community Scotland, and I'd say we're now an independent charity. We basically are there to support. Initially, our kind of remit was supporting faith community projects, because it's recognising they're often sort of overlooked or underserved, or there's not a lot of support there been there for them in the past, in terms of just recognising that they're often there with a building within the community, with volunteers, with a desire and a passion to support people who are struggling within the city. So we've always had a role to be there to support them, identify with them, what the needs are within their community. So assessing the community need, identifying what their role could be within that to support them. And often that's kind of taken the form of food in some respect. Not always, but often food has been a kind of at the heart of how they've wanted to engage with their community. So kind of opening their doors, bringing folk in, and providing, a hot meal, food, but more importantly than that, company, a listening ear, friendship, just a sense of safety and security, and knowing that someone is there for them. And that's not taken necessarily religious or, a faith-based angle, but it's coming from their faith, their desire to do something, and recognizing that they're there willing to do something, and often just don't always have the tools and resources to access, funding or, training, things like that. So we've always been there to have that role within Dundee. And as I say, because a lot of that took the form of food, a lot of the time, we've been supporting them to run projects for a long time. And some of them have been running for 10 plus years themselves, running community drop-ins, community cafes, etc. So we've always kind of worked in partnership citywide with a lot of these projects. We've kind of, we don't run the projects ourselves, but again, we provide that sort of background support and logistics support, and sometimes as well trying to identify actually, what tools and resources are out there for them. What's the kind of national picture looking like, and how are we kind of all fitting into that? And so that was always taken that kind of form of kind of support. But once the pandemic hit, it was kind of, we thought we just need to bring everyone together and identify how are we going to tackle this. And we already have a lot of great projects out there, but they're going to struggle. We don't really know how we're going to take this forward. How are we going to make sure people are still being supported, that they can still access food? So we brought everyone together along with local councillors and the council, to kind of just have a meeting and go, actually, how do we tackle this, and how do we respond to this need during the pandemic where, everything you knew was kind of thrown up in the air and you had no idea how you're going to do this. And so that's kind of the point from which we've started working now, and that's kind of developed a lot of our sort of future plans moving forward.
Good. So like you said, well, we're in one pandemic, now we're switching to another crisis where we have this cost of living increase that's happening, which will be panicking quite a lot of people. So I take it Faith in the Community will be there to help support people who are maybe finding themselves a wee bit in that level of crisis where they need a bit more support. Can people find this within their local communities then, Danny? Is this something you offer community-based?
Yeah, so just a wee bit of background, just from as I say, when we got together, once the pandemic hit, we then kind of developed a network. And we always kind of had a network, as I say, but it became more formalized, specifically focused around the food. And that was initially called the Food Insecurity Network. So that was us meeting weekly, assessing the needs of the projects. What support did they need? Did they need PPE, infrastructure costs and needs, to make sure the space was safe for people to access, that they could keep themselves and customers safe, and the clients who were working with safe. So that was a 2-year kind of project, of just making sure that food was getting out there. There was support from the council to provide centralised distribution of food every week. That was being delivered through one of our amazing partners, ACD, so it's Alexander Community Development. They became a sort of centralised hub of food distribution. So they were using their vans, their their warehouse and their staff and volunteers in order to sort through that food, get that out to everyone. So that continues. We're still doing that, and we've now formed the network as the Dundee Community Food Network, because we recognised that food insecurity was part of what we were looking at. But there was just so much more to that. We want there to be more of a access of community food. We want it to be, it's open to everyone. It's not just people who are maybe suffering from food insecurity. We want there to be a more of a community feel to the work we're doing, because as I said previously as well, with the drop-ins and community cafes, they were there to provide support for food, but it's so much more than that. It's a sense of community, a sense of well-being, safety, having someone to talk to. So it's trying to reduce isolation and loneliness as well. So the projects are not just there as a place for food; they're there for so much more than that. So we're now in a position where we have, I think 24 plus food projects citywide covering each ward. And part of the work we've been doing is identifying where the gaps are within each ward, to make sure that there's local community access as much as possible on someone's doorstep. So that kind of falls in line with the Scottish Government's 20-minute neighbourhood. So the idea is that something is within 20-minute walking distance of your home. And we're not saying we can necessarily hit that target, but we are looking at that as a way of, making sure that people are not having to travel to the other end of the city to access food. So when I talk about food and in terms of the food projects, that's just kind of the overarching term. But really, what we're meaning is the community fridges, which is kind of free at the point of access, which is just kind of a lot of surplus food. So that's how that impacts on the environment. It's a lot of food that would otherwise go to landfill and go to waste. So it's there. A lot of it's fresh. A lot of it's donated stuff, and people can go and access that. So they've got community fridge models. We have the food larder models, which I've seen a lot of projects transition to that model, which has been really important, because that's all about providing choice for people and increasing the dignified access to food. So it's not about saying, here's a food bag, there you go.
No.
It's actually saying, come in and choose what you want. It's not always going to be as big a selection as a supermarket, but the idea is that it's, again, giving people that choice, a bit of ownership over what they're able to buy and consume, and what suits the needs of their family, their individual needs as an individual as well. So we've seen a lot of the larger models kind of take shape across the city, and we think we're going to see an increase in that as well. And often some of them are free, but some of them are just a very small charge, sometimes £1 or £2 a membership, and that allows people to go along, pay the small fee, and then they can choose items they want and take that home. And we also have just some drop-ins as well. So often they're all free, and they can provide more tailored support sometimes. So we have some drop-ins that can provide some general support and advice around sort of healthcare, especially if someone who might be struggling with substance use, they can go along to some of the drop-ins and get some more tailored support for that, as well as, again, a hot meal support, advice, friendship, community connections. That's what a lot of these projects, although the food is the crux of what they're doing, that it has a much wider impact, as I say. And then we also have community cafes. So they're one of probably the longest standing kind of community support models within the city. And often, again, they run under a kind of eat what you want, pay what you can type model. So people can donate if they can, but there's no pressure to do that. And it's all about reducing the barriers to access. And again, having somewhere they can come and have a home cooked meal, that's got sort of kind of health benefits, but again, there's someone there to talk to. There's ways of connecting into the community. And a lot of these projects as well do more than just that. They run groups. We've done cooking classes within some of the projects as well. So it's all about trying to help upskill, increase knowledge, and increase access to food. So as I say, they run across the city within each ward, and our role is to try and identify, actually, are there any gaps in that provision? Are there any maybe groups of people that we've missed that we're not working with? Do we need more tailored support for older people within a particular community, or young families? And what we do as well with the projects is we try to respond to what they're seeing on the ground. So we don't say, because we coordinate the Dundee Community Food Network and we help to provide information, advice around funding, and making sure that the food's getting out to the projects, and any kind of logistic support, background support they need, and then training needs as well. We say, well, what do you see? What the people that are coming through the door, what support are they saying they need from you? And making sure the projects are there to respond to that. So that's been providing grants as well for the projects, so that they can just buy in what they need, or change their space to make it more accessible, whatever they need in order to make sure that it's as accessible for the community as possible, because we want to reduce the stigma, reduce any barriers to access and support in the city. So as I say, all that and all those projects run across the city, and there's pretty good coverage most of the week. The weekends there's not as much in terms of the provision, but there's some areas that are well covered for that as well. So we do try to make sure there's access kind of Monday to Sunday as much as possible citywide, and that there's somewhere for someone to go within their local area to access food, as well as advice and support as well.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I think I didn't actually know myself how wide range you covered in things. I mean, you're right enough saying that a lot of the community stuff, people can come along, not just for the food side of things, but for the social aspect as well, just to get that that kind of socialization, reduce isolation from being at home, and come along for a cooked meal. And if they need to pick up a few things for home, they can as well. So I think that's good, that people need to know that there is that community base there for them to access.
It's really important that people feel there's somewhere they can go where they just won't be judged, and a lot of people, as we talked about, the kind of impact of the rising cost of living, energy costs and stuff. We've gone from one pandemic, as you said, to another. Coming out of COVID, we kind of thought, we'll find our footing again. We'll kind of start to get back to some sort of normality. We're still living with COVID. We still need to take that into consideration in terms of safety measures, etc. But things have opened up again. But I don't think we've even as one pandemic, I don't think we've seen the full effects of the impact of that on people's mental health yet, on the impact of the isolation that had on them. But we do, with the training we do with the projects, we try to build in mental health support and training, so there's resources there around that, both for the projects and for individuals as well. We try to partner, with the advice services, so we work really closely with them to make sure that they're within the projects, there's information and advice around money as well, and benefits and grants that people maybe didn't know they could be accessing, both prior and during the pandemic as well, and since we're out of the pandemic as well, what support's available for people. So you've kind of got that as one thing, kind of dealing with the impact of COVID, and that's meant some job losses as well. People reducing their hours at work and less money coming into the household. So we're already seeing an impact of the pandemic in terms of the cost of living for people. But now we're in a rising cost of living and energy crisis. So we're now kind of having to deal with that. And that means that people are struggling more so than they ever were before, trying to budget for higher costs. And a lot of folk just don't have that disposable income. It's just not there. And we can't magic that out of thin air. As I say, we've got advice and resources, and the advice services are brilliant within Dundee, supporting people and trying to make sure they've got all the money they're entitled to, but that is a process as well that can take time. So some people do have to, they might be eligible for money, but it might take time. And so the food projects there to kind of mitigate some of that, particularly the larders. It can sometimes just be filling the cupboards, filling the gaps in the cupboard sometimes. Sometimes it could be your weekly shop. It just depends on the circumstances of the person, but no one's there to judge anybody on their individual situations. A lot of the volunteers, and a lot of these projects are volunteer led and run. They felt the impact of the rising cost of living themselves as an individual. We were all impacted by COVID in some way. So there is an understanding, of that we're all in it together to a degree. We also appreciate, the privilege of, well, we're in a job that allows us to support people in this position. So my situation will be different to someone else, but it's recognizing that there is no judgment there, that everyone understands that this is something that's affecting everyone, and it'll hurt others, some people more than others, and that's what these projects are there to help people with. But it's also impacting the projects in terms of the cost of renting their spaces, the cost of them cooking as well. Their energy costs have gone up, so we need to factor that in when we're looking at funding for the project, and as well as in terms of this support that the council are providing. But we have a brilliant partnership with them. They're fully on board with the strategy that we've laid out, that we developed with them. So we have a really clear strategy of how we want to take things forward within the city, and that's including increasing access to food, as I mentioned, but also increasing access to advice. So we're calling that taking a cash first approach. So that's about making sure that anyone, hopefully if they go along to one of these projects, can speak to someone there to get guidance around where they could be accessing money advice, housing support, employment support, and various other things. So there's either a trained volunteer within the space or an advice service based within that project, so that when they go there, it's a sort of at the first point of contact, they've got someone there they can speak to about that issue. But that's not to say they have to either. They might, not everyone has to share their situation with us and with the projects, but there's someone there if they feel ready to do that with. But we just want everyone to know that, the projects are there as a non-judgmental, totally open space. And as I say, that's why we want to call it Dundee Community Food Network, because it's about the community. And the food is part of that, but it's about having community spaces, community hubs, community cafes, food ladders, places that people can come that are just open to everyone, no matter their circumstances, and so that they feel welcomed and feel that there is support there, when it feels like you can't really control so many other things that are going on politically or, with decisions that are being made out with your control, that you can take a bit of control back by at least being able to choose the food that you're consuming and eating, at a reduced price. That's something that's affordable and tries to keep the bills down, especially when you're trying to offset that now with the rising cost of energy. And we know that food is also rising. The cost of food is rising for people in the supermarkets. So it's just trying to keep those costs down and keep them manageable for people, while also linking them into other support as well.
Good. And I think people need to be, I think that there is a barrier there for some people, isn't there? And probably is always going to be, but even nipping along just for a cup of tea and a chat, or even just coming along for a nosy in the first instance to see what it's all about. That's something, doing that for the first couple of weeks and then maybe building up. But yeah, people need to know that is service and that support is definitely there on their doorstep a lot of the time. So if people were wanting to come along or to find out more, can they just pop along to one of the community cafes or that's going on, or what's the best method of getting in touch?
So with all the community cafes, larders, community fridges, etc., none of them work on a referral basis. They're all just open, so anyone can just turn up. The food bank is still a referral. You still need a referral to access both the Top by Mohammed Food Bank and the Dundee Food Bank. So they're still there to provide that emergency support. They are still play a really important role within the city. But they recognise themselves, they don't want to be the first point of access. They are there to provide that emergency support, but will be more limited. They can only provide a sort of 3-day parcel for folk. But they are there to provide support. They often again provide advice, resources and stuff as well. It's not just going along for a food bag. But so that's the only project in terms of the food that would need a referral. In terms of advice services, sometimes you'll need a referral. Sometimes you can just signpost people on, give them the number and call up. So all that information's there. We there's a few sources of information basically people can access. We have on our website at Faith and Community Dundee, we have a search tool on there. So we just developed that with one of our members of staff, and that basically allows you to search by postcode for the individual and the types of food provision they're looking for, whether that be a larder, a community cafe, a kind of supper club, whatever it might be. And they can search for that, and it'll show them what's in their local area. So their opening times, if there's any cost associated with it, and it also puts it on the map so they can see from where they are exactly how far away it is, what street it's on. It can be pinned. You can then view it on the maps, the street view, all that kind of stuff. So it's really visual, and because we've got a resource as well that's just a kind of a Word document that's got all the food projects on it listed by ward, and it's got their address on there. But if you don't know that particular street, you might not know where that is. So that search tool's there for people to use and access, and that's both for individuals and for staff, for anybody that might be looking for that kind of information. And again, they can search, and it gives all the information by that area. As I say, we've also got the Word document as well, which you keep up to date, which is accessible. And in terms of
on the website too, sorry, Danny.
But that's as part. So on our Facebook page, Faith and Community Dundee, pinned to the very top, you have the link to the search tool, but you also have the link to kind of other resources, and then within that, you've got as resources there around the food provision. So you've got the Word document. You've got the link to the search tool as well, so just another point of access to that search tool. And within that resources link as well, we also have the money advice leaflet. So it's called the What Do I Do If money advice leaflet. So that's something that was developed in Dundee by ourselves in partnership with the Menu for Change project. So I was working with Nourish Scotland and other partners within the city and nationally. And we piloted that, and that essentially it gives people an idea of what the kind of issue are they're facing, what options are available to them, and who can help with that. So it's kind of a bit of a guide to help people understand actually what are my options when my money isn't stretched far enough, or I'm in debt, or if I had a sudden unexpected bill. And it kind of lays out some of the main key options. So whether that be, the Scottish Welfare Fund, for instance, where they can receive a grant, a community care grant, and other things, and crisis grants as well. So all that's kind of listed, and we try to make that as simple as possible for people to understand, because the benefit system can be really complicated.
Oh yeah,
We don't
yeah.
expect anyone to understand all the different kinds of benefits that are out there, but we've got that leaflet, which is hopefully a really simple, straightforward guide for people. Um, but we also have another kind of resource, which is kind of the different grants as well, and etc. that are available through Social Security Scotland, for instance, and others, to help people understand again what their options are, what they might be entitled to they hadn't realised. So all that's in there, and we try to keep it on the drive as a way of having a portal of information we can keep updated,
Yeah.
because things change so often. A phone number might change for a project or for an advice service, etc. So we try to keep that updated, and if we keep them as a live document, we can keep adding things, changing things. We appreciate that everyone will have, obviously access to the internet at home, but we've tried to increase that within the projects, where some of them, we've got some funding to provide them with laptops, so that all those laptops are loaded up with that information. So if someone goes along, and again, it's just want to browse themselves, they don't have to do it with someone else. They can have a look through those resources and figure out actually what's there for me. What support can I be accessing, and that includes the mental health resource as well that I'd mentioned. So it's quite a comprehensive list of different projects and services that are available for people locally, and that's something we try to keep updated as well. And we also work with, one of the projects we work with is the parish nursing project. So they provide a drop-in for folk within the city, and provide that kind of healthcare, dealing with people that are in recovery, that are still going through substance use, and really providing that holistic, a caring approach. And they've developed a recovery roadmap app as well. So again, that can be found on our website at Faith and Community Dundee. And that app can be downloaded both for Apple and Android now. And that just has a list of services for peer support, recovery support, and the food provision information's on there as well. And that we're trying to make that almost a one-stop shop of information of various different support services citywide. And it's very interactive. Again, it's got a map on there. You can call the services through that. So there's some brilliant resources out there, and we're trying to make it as accessible as possible, for people.
Very good. No, it's really good. And there's so much that people can access through yourself. It's amazing. And I think, as you say, it's a one-stop shop. So people definitely need to get to get to know more about it, I think, if they don't know already. And what we'll do today is we'll post up some of the links for the Facebook and your website, and contact numbers if people do want to get in touch anyway, so people can get in touch with you that way. But no, that all sounds amazing, Danny. It's a lot of great resources out there that people can definitely get tapped into and pick up whatever they feel they need at this minute. And I think just now people might not be at that stage yet. They might be at a stage where they feel everything's going okay, but to know that if things do change down the line in the next 3 or 4 months, that service and that support is there for them to access if they need it. So even just familiarising yourself with it just now, that way, come that time you do maybe need to get a bit more support, they'll know where to come.
Absolutely, and we hope that some of that stuff can be preventative as much as possible, so that before people hit a crisis point, they can start to take those steps. But if the crisis point happens, which can happen, people, it's unexpected a lot of the time for folk, that they know there's somewhere they can go locally, and that there's resources there they can tap into, as you say, and just hope that gives people enough. Again, a sense of kind of ownership and choice about, okay, I don't know what to do here, but there is information here that I can access that'll help guide me in the whatever direction I need to go in. And we're going to continue to try and increase the amount of food provision, increase the amount of advice that's accessible within the city. So it's not going away anytime soon. We recognise that these projects are going to be needed for a long time to come. They're still so passionate about what they're doing. They care so much about their community. So they will be there through thick and thin, and we want to continue to be there as a source of support for people. And just for people to feel like they're not on their own, you know, when things
Yeah.
just feel so out of their control. And that includes, you know, working with, again, the council around their fuel. So the kind of fuel well scheme, and there'll be more information coming out about that, about how people can get support around their fuel as well,
Okay.
which is just so important at the
Yeah.
moment. You know, the scheme ran last year and it went extremely well, but it's actually run twice now, and there's an influx of you know, applications to that. People were so desperately in need of it, and more so than ever now, you know. But it's not
Definitely.
just your energy again, it's a more holistic process that people go through. It's just looking at their wider situation, wider support needs as well. So that will be launching again. So we will provide information about that. So again, we'll make that available, you know, push that out there. If there's any kind of things like that, any schemes like that that are coming up for anyone, we will make sure we're publicising that and people can access that, because we're aware more than ever that that'll be one of the first things. It's the sort of at the front of their mind, is
Yeah.
just how they're going to manage to pay for their fuel at home, because
Yeah.
it just doesn't seem to be any let up anytime soon.
No.
And you know, we're just trying to make sure that people don't feel, reduce the pinch of that as much as possible, I suppose,
Yeah.
as best we can. So
And they're not alone. They're not alone. There's people there
absolutely,
that is there to talk to and to help as much as they can. So
absolutely,
people need to remember that we're not in this alone. We're all together with this one. So use the resources that are there when you need them.
absolutely.
Perfect. Well, people who are watching this, you can put a comment below or direct message us, and we'll pass them across to Danny and the team at Faith in the Community, and they'll try their best to answer them for you. But I'd just like to thank you, Danny, for taking the time to be with me today and to chat about this. I think it's really important for people to know about what's available in their community. And yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and I say we hope that this will just raise a wee bit of awareness about the support that's out there, and I appreciate that you're giving this platform as well to do that. I think it's really important that you guys are doing that, so thank you so much for that as well.
No, thank you, Danny.